Jambo from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Florence Nduta. I will be your moderator for this particular session. And let me say one thing. Sports has the power to unite and uplift us. It educates, it empowers. It creates awareness of what is possible. For girls and women around the world, exposure to and inclusion in sports is paramount to installing these learning things and eradicating the inequality that girls and women face every day. I must say that I'm so excited to have this session with amazing, amazing ladies. Joining us all the way from Germany is MAJKEN Gilmartin. Are you with us, MAJKEN? Can you hear us?
I am, and yes, I can. I'm actually not all the way from Germany. I'm all the way from Denmark.
Okay, sorry. We missed that. If you could repeat that again, we kind of missed that. The connection wasn't very clear.
I just said hello to everyone, and actually not from Germany right now, but from Denmark right now.
Okay, thank you very much. And also all the way from Mombasa, to Kona Daktari MIRRIAM MPAATA. How are you, Daktari?
I'm very well, thank you. Very happy to be here.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad that we have you with us. And with me in the studio is Grace Kirago. She is a good friend of mine, but also let me just tell you a little bit about Grace before we go and talk about these other amazing women joining us today. Grace is the founding director of Icon Sports Limited, Marketing Limited. Grace is what I would call a guru in branding, marketing, communications, mentor and trainer, independent consultant, and above all, a champion for women empowerment programs. So this is just a woman with so much to tell us about. But when I talk about MAJKEN all the way in Germany, she is the co-founder and CEO at Global Goals World Cup, founder and owner of Sensational Street Corner, board member of the Women's Commission, that is the Danish Football Association, and a film producer. So you can imagine, clearly when they say that women can handle so many things, yes, this is one of them. And when I go back to Daktari, all the way in Mombasa, Kenya, she's a sports activist. She's an author of a book called Boots Don't Lie. Then we have, she's also a sports columnist. She's a CEO of Africa Sports Foundation Center, founder of Junior Stars Football Academy in Uganda, and she has a master's and honorary doctorate in sports management. And here she is, and today she is a goalkeeper of this Soccer Divas Club. You didn't think I remember that, Daktari? So I'm going to start with you. Boots Don't Lie. I got the opportunity to watch this particular film, but I would like Daktari to take us through, especially when you heard the glass break that window, when your son changed your entire life. I would say that. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you very much, Nduta. I'm always very excited being in a platform where women are talking about the good things they're doing. And of course, especially about sports, it always excites me because I know how much sports really builds people and changes lives. And yes, that's how football changed my life, because about 15 years ago, when I was, a young girl, just moved into Kenya and looking for job opportunities and very confused on how my life would pan out. And one day my son, who loved football so much that he was always having the football in his bed, just kicked his ball over a wall fence, and it smacked right into our neighbor's Mercedes Benz and broke the windscreen. And, of course, my neighbor, as you get to read in my book, is that she was very upset because she loved her book. She loved her Mercedes Benz. It was like her baby, And, we had this haggle and hustle about what to do next. And we had to pay for the damages.
Wow.
And, when I went back at night, I kept thinking this young man is going to repeat the same thing. And you still have to, cough out some money to deal with the damages.
Yes.
So being a housewife, I had a lot of time on my side. And I figured out if I could just find a place for him to play, and then we could, avoid all these inconveniences. So I tried looking for a sports academy in Mombasa, and I couldn't find one. And, I started thinking, I'll just take him with his friends to a field, get them playing. I'll just sit in a chair and watch, and then just be a chauffeur, drive them back home. And, with time, I started to realize that it would not just be that easy, because I needed to find out more about what sports and what football is all about.
Exactly.
And I remember in 2007 when Kenya went into the post-election violence, and we had to go back home to Uganda. And I discovered that Uganda had so many football academies, and I started visiting them and getting to know what they do, taking my son there to play. And of course, when I came back, when everything had cooled down, is when I took the first initiative to actually jump into football. And I remember on 7th April 2007, and we had recruited about 15 boys, including my son. And we had these huge footballs. It was so huge because I had no clue what I was doing. I imagined a football is a football, So there I was in the field with these 15 boys, a coach. And even then, I didn't figure out how magnificent this platform would be. I still imagined my role would be just to chauffeur these guys and just cheer them on, and that would be it. But then, of course, magic began to happen, because I started to fall in love with the fact that there were so many smiles, young people were excited.
Yes.
It was just this place that they could be themselves. And I realized that for me to even make it more fulfilling, I had to understand what football was all about.
Yes.
And that's how I, started my journey in football.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we're going to go much later and indulge into exactly what she's doing, especially when it comes to empowerment. But I don't want to move on so fast. I just want to ask a basic question to the ladies with me. What is women empowerment to you individually? So I'm going to start with you, MAJKEN. What does that mean before we indulge really deeply into what we are doing? What does it mean to you?
If we take it in the context of sports, I would say is that we 100% just really have that gut feeling in us that we trust that sport is ours to own. So when have we turned the sports world around so much that we all think that sport is for everyone and everybody everywhere we live, and for all? I think that would be, in a sense of empowerment in the world, not just for women but for all of us to really believe and trust that being physically active is a human right, is something that we should have access to throughout our lives, from we're born till we die. Because that's it's such a nurturing thing for our mind and for our health, and for all of us to have this way of learning. If you have access to play, to being physically active, it's it's the biggest educational tool from birth. Ongoing, it'll keep our brains going, it'll keep our body going. Yeah, so I think empowerment for me in that sense is that reaching a state where everybody feels that this is their world to be in.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Grace, what does that mean to you? What's your interpretation of women empowerment?
For me, when I listen to the words, to the question of sports empowerment, I look at it, women empowerment, I look at sports in three facets. One is the actual sports where we have athletes participating. And in that one, I look at sports empowerment being the increase of opportunities for women to participate in sports, increase the opportunities for them to competitively and enjoy the game of sports, and also to be able to be in leadership as far as sports participation is concerned. But I look at the next level. Sports empowerment is sports is a whole ecosystem of business.
Yes.
Again, I look at women who can tap into those opportunities and still get empowered. Yes. In terms of you got running a business, from a branding perspective, from a merchandising perspective, that whole ecosystem is a platform for women to get empowerment. But I look at the third, and for me the most important, is looking at sport for development, where you're looking at sport being a tool for social inclusion. And that social inclusion does not leave out women. So if women can tap into all that, then we have a community of empowered women through sports, as in they are empowered to play, They are empowered to do business, but more importantly, they are socially included and integrated in the community using the sports platform. That way, the empowerment of women is 360.
Yes.
Inclusive, from a participant to the person doing business to the woman in the community who is from unpeaceful communities or who has challenges, who can get a chance to play, and that element empowers her to have a proper state of mind. So empowerment in this case is not just that you're playing. It's not just a question of waking up and play. So for me, I look at empowerment of women in sports being a whole chain.
Yes.
A whole chain, and therefore that is, yeah, and so and it's tied together, so one piece ties to the next one.
Yes.
So if we can have empowerment right from the sports participation, increase the women.
Exactly.
From a business perspective, let them open their eyes to look at sports as a business opportunity. And from a participation perspective, social inclusion, and take advantage of sports to empower themselves, both from a leadership perspective as well as just the mental.
Yes.
The mental ability to recognize sports. So you become a totally empowered person in 360.
Exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And that leads me back to you, MAJKEN. The birth of Global Goals World Cup. Where did that idea come from?
So when the UN Sustainable Development Goals were going to be implemented in 2015, leading up to that, there was we were in conversations with women around the world from the world of sports in saying, could we get physical education under Goal 4, quality education? That would mean that would probably be about 60 million girls around the world who doesn't have access to sport, who should have access to sport then through schools. We didn't succeed in this, but it gave, I think we were partly an eye-opener for UN in the sense of having the conversation of what role sport could play. So so then we took it and said, okay, we are, you know, I was making my films, but every year I would make this big tournament where 120 women's team would come together and play at one of the big music festivals. Very fun. And so I said, if the global goals are our biggest to-do list, that means that we have to put the global goals in front of everything we do. So we were doing these football tournaments, and we were doing, now this is a volleyball, we were doing, and we're doing creating footballs and volleyballs. So let's also create those with the global goals are on them, so it becomes also a learning or educational tool. So that was the start, and then we were saying, okay, so we've been working inside of Denmark for a long time, and then should we try to go outside of Denmark and try to navigate around in the world as a challenge for ourselves? So saying, okay, if the global goals are the biggest to-do list, let's try to do that, and then let's show that sport can actually, you know, be a driver for those changes that we have to see in the global goals. And then we said, you can kind of sometimes say with sport for development, you can say that sport is amazing, but you can also see the other side of it. It can also be not just amazing. So we decided that we wanted to create a point system where it was not accidentally if people or teams were doing something for the global goals, but they actually got a point for the actions they were taking for one of the global goals. So it's just a long, playful game. And now we've done I just returned from Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and we've just done our 21st or 21 tournaments of the ones that we do globally around the world. So and it's amazing. It's mind-blowing to see what the teams are doing, what the activations, they start doing one thing and then it leads to another, and they keep their own team active, but they also really keep the people around them in their own families and in their communities onto the idea that we can all take steps for the global goals.
Excellent. I think we'll dig deeper into that later on, because it's quite an interesting platform to be able to turn around the lives of these women through the activities that they're doing. But more so, I'd like to come to Dr. Mariam. And the reason I asked MAJKEN that question was because I know that in Uganda, you also have your Global Goals World Cup in Uganda, Dr. Could you tell us a little bit more on the projects that you're working on there?
Thank you, Nduta, for that question. Of course, Global Goals World Cup is one of those closest projects that has changed my life and many other women in Uganda. We hosted the tournament in 2020, right before the COVID hit us. And it was so magical having women, as old as, 70 participate in this tournament.
Wow.
And being able to, to think about sustainable development goals, something that, some of the women had never really, internalized, because when we talk about the SDGs, most of the times it's in boardrooms. People are making decisions.
Exactly.
But what Global Goals does is actually take these SDGs to the grassroots. Women, being able to talk about what are my rights in terms of health? What are my rights in terms of education? How can I play a role towards that?
Yes.
And being able to see women in Uganda sit down in circles in the field and discuss such things and, take little action. I remember there was a team that was very passionate about, farming and agriculture. And they said, look here, we can't afford, to buy food, but we could actually grow the food within our small little gardens at home.
Yes.
We could grow the food in our compounds. So it was just amazing being able to see women take those little actions. So in Uganda, we've done the Global Goals World Cup, and we hosted it under the umbrella of Africa Sports Foundation Center, which is an institution that I began some 4 years ago with a with a vision to be able to use sports education to connect, to young people who are passionate about sports and they've not been able to play in the field. Because most of the times when we talk about sports, we think about the professional sports in terms of being on the field, and playing in the Premier League and, going big and all these things. But there are almost, you can even say maybe 60% of talented people never get to the field. So what happens to the other 60%? So these young people who are passionate about sports, the coaches that are passionate about sports, but they're not able to take their passion to the field and talent, we want to tap into them as an organization in terms of facilitating sports education.
Exactly.
We could have our own professional coaches, we could have referees, we could have sports journalists. So we want to be able to give access to courses that can change lives in terms of sports, empower them with sports education, so that we can be able to take control of our own industry. Because one of the challenges, Nduta, that I realize is that we can build as many academies as possible in terms of football. We can build, facilities. But if we don't have the knowledge, we still end up messing up those facilities.
Absolutely.
I know that I've seen so many facilities, sports grounds that have, and stadiums that are now, dilapidated because even the sports facility management is lacking the knowledge and skills. So for us as Africa Sports, we want to be able to provide accessible and affordable sports education. And it's a dream that I have. I want to passionately advocate for it. I hope one day I can be able to set up East Africa's first sports university.
Amen.
And we've already bought land in Uganda, about 10 acres. So I'm just dreaming on and hoping that in the next few years, things will happen.
Wow, just as I've been dreaming and telling everybody that I'm going to be a goalkeeper, I already have taken that position. I hear there's a 70-year-old who I have to prove myself against, and I am up to the challenge. But are we also looking at having this kind? I mean, let me come back to you, Daktari. I need to know, or probably I'm curious, what other countries participated in that tournament?
One of the things we need to know is that Global Goals World Cup has been in Africa for, I think in about 5 countries, if I'm not wrong. I first got to know about it and play in it in Nairobi. And that's when I got to play with, and we had Ugandan teams coming in there. When we took it to Uganda, we had a Tanzanian team and Kenyan teams coming all the way to play in Uganda. I've also been in South Africa to play the tournament. And Nigeria is probably hosting the tournament very soon next year. you have Morocco. There are so many other African countries that are embracing the tournament. So yes, it's around the continent, and Megan and her team are doing such a tremendous job. And yes, we need to recruit you, Nduta, and your team as well in these tournaments.
Yeah, I'm up to the challenge. I don't fear anything. I'm good for the challenges. Now, I heard Megan has heard that, so I'm now worried, yeah? But, Megan, you know, I think where I'm going with this, because I looked at your story, you've gone to a territory that people really don't think about, and, you know, you saw a moment that probably Grace and I looked at each other, because we need more awareness. Yes, I'm hearing it's been in Kenya, but the first time I'm hearing about it is in Uganda and in Nigeria. So I think there seems to be, you know, something missing there that we need to, you know, because you work with a lot of women, especially in empowerment. Do you think that there's something missing there that probably we should also try and push and look for?
I think there's a lot of sports development activities, a lot in Kenya.
Yes.
So sometimes we may miss out on one or two, but I do believe there's a lot of opportunities happening for community,
Yes.
in terms of community outreach programs.
Yes.
They're already there.
Yeah.
We have the groups that have been doing, like, I use the example of MISA.
Okay.
They have been involved in very many of those community competitions. They play both in Kenya, they play in Norway. I also know, again, moving the goalpost, a sports for development organization based in Kilifi. They also do the same. So, but the kind of competitions they participate in, sometimes they don't get, because they're not competitive, they don't end up getting a lot of media coverage.
Exactly.
So the likes of you and I, who probably are not following sports,
Yeah.
you may not hear about them,
Yes.
but there's so much happening around the communities. MISA has consistently, and I'm not sure about right now, but they have consistently played in Norway, Norwegian league, because they play under 16, under 14. They take like 6 teams every year. I think it's only the past 3 years they might not have. But do we get to know about them? No, unless you're in that circle. Why? Because of media coverage. Media wants to cover, I'm not saying they don't cover, but
it's not enough.
It's not enough. It's covered, but not enough, not exposure enough for the rest of the world to know what's happening within the communities, especially. So I guess that is where we are saying, she said she's managed to do the competition in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania and maybe South Africa, but maybe you and I have not heard about it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So that means that there's a need
There's
for
a need.
awareness. Awareness, because I
Yes.
strongly believe on these platforms, there's
Yes.
so much we can be able to do, because I'm looking at what MAJKEN has done in Jordan.
Exactly.
I mean, MAJKEN, Jordan, tell me about that experience, because I watched that before it was screened, and I'm just thinking, this woman has such courage. Tell me about the activists there, because and their programs and how that experience was for each one of them. Because through the film, we can't really get into it. But I'm just so curious, because I know what kind of sensitive populations they live in.
Yes.
So can you just tell me a bit more than that? Because I really feel I just need to hand it to you. That was a job well done.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, and I completely agree what you're saying right now. It is, it's a lack of exposure. I mean, I can sometimes think it's like sitting back, you know, with our host partners in the different countries that we played, and says, wow, I mean, this is, really, really wild to see how these women are suddenly taking all of these steps. But there are very, very little media coverage about it.
Yes.
So it's both because of us lacking resources to have enough people that are actually spending the time of getting the stories out there and explaining to people, or being able to afford to invite journalists to come and see what it is that we're doing. So, and I think that's the same. I mean, with moving the goalpost, they won the Global Goals World Cup final, the overall final in New York in 2017, and they were received when they got back to Kenya. They were received by the mayor and everybody, but still the story becomes so tiny. But for the women, for the people that we work with, the stories are huge. So I think that with anyone that works in sport for development, that's probably also the reason why we just constantly keep on going. Because
I was saying you must have some super power, because
right now in
I'm
Jordan,
like, I'm just still going back to Jordan, and I'm just trying to think of the various, how can I put it? Okay, they have their own goals. I'm going to look at the word goals. What kind of things were they working on? You know, like whether it's water projects or whatever it was. Those are the things, because I'm trying to imagine the hardships they would go through before they enroll into the tournament. Those kind of boundaries that they had to like face. You know, there's also the local community that would stop you. You're an Arab woman. There are these things thou cannot do, thou shalt not do. But then how did you manage to help them now overcome that for them to get permission, so to speak, to participate?
Yeah, you have to kind of take some steps, not too dramatic. So on social media, we turned the social media towards women. So we would try to see if we could find a way where we weren't being too criticized for being, you know, doing women's football in that region. So so we took the men out for a period of time. We encourage the women to dare to speak up, but we don't do that necessarily right away. They will take their first steps towards, and sometimes it's one of these, you start taking some steps that you go to a school and you talk to them about planting, and you talk to them about the diversity of bees and what a distance do you have to have, you know, if you plant here, how far does the next plant have to be for the bees to travel? So they start with these things, but then as the months go by, suddenly it becomes about them planting 1 million trees over 8 years in the whole country. Wow. Or they start out being 30 people who goes out and picks up garbage, and suddenly they have not just 30 people, but they have 30 areas around in Jordan where they have thousands of people participating in picking up garbage. So they start out with something, and then it just grows with them, and they see their own ability, you know, as change makers. Excellent. And in Jordan, it was we are doing we kind of overlapping some programs. So after the tournament, we introduced a 1-year coach program where we invited 100 women to participate. We said, what will happen if you go in and say 100 new female activist football coaches will come into the community in Jordan, and we are graduating them the end of November, so 100 of them, and we got 344 applications for women who just really wanted to participate in this 1-year program, and we're finishing it now, and every other week they are scored. They collect points for the amount of football training that they are doing, the amount of people they're coaching, and for the activations that they are doing. And this means every week they're on the football field, every week they're on the activist field, every week they're out doing something for the community. And this whole thing about doing something every week for a year makes you good. So, I mean, to see them now as coaches, as football coaches, and to see them now as these complete, wildly amazing activists over the year is it's just because, as you say, that they don't necessarily come from. I mean, we had a team from the Gaza refugee camp, and for them they had nowhere where they could practice, right? And then kind of, that means that we're going to fight to find a place where we can practice. And this turned out to not just finding a space, but this actually turned into building a space. So now there's a newly built space, indoor facility, football facility in the Gaza camp that had never been there before, you know, that the women have access to. So and every team has that kind of activation. Every team of them do these things.
I think the reason I wanted you to answer that question is for people to understand it's not just football or they're coming to play. They do have a mission. They do have an activity. They do have a mission that they're working on. Through sports, it takes them to another level. So I think that is something that we need everywhere for women, especially we're empowering them. No matter wherever you are, you heard she's talking about people in a refugee camp. And they're sitting there doing nothing. And then they realize I can do something instead of sitting there and be miserable. So I'm really, really, really encouraged, I think, MAJKEN, with this particular program, and Paul and Daktari, I believe we're going to go to a different level if we continue just the same way. So guys, continue this trend. I'm very encouraged. I would like to also ask Grace. Recently, You did something with KIRAGURI, who is our brand ambassador with girls, or let me call them ladies, in rugby. I would love to hear about that workshop.
Oh, fantastic. So, as you've heard, I've been in sports industry for a very long time, and I'm an entrepreneur and a founding director of Icon Sports. So I have grown in the sports sector now 15, 17 years being an entrepreneur. And I have also transitioned to try and see how do I then use my expertise to bring up other women. And that is when I was approached by one of the rugby directors called Paris Mukoko. She's a current director for women in Kenya Rugby. The Kenya Rugby had just gotten a grant to be able to tap into women from what they're calling global to grassroots to global, funded by Child Fund. So they were looking at it like, how do we do a program where we let the women let us know what are the issues or what are the barriers that are stopping them from, stopping the game of rugby from excelling. You know, are there barriers? But we did not want to be the one owning the challenges and giving the women solution. So the workshop was actually intended to let the women speak, crack their heads. Why aren't we developing the game of rugby in Kenya? What are our main barriers? And if we come up with the barriers, what are our solutions? And if we come up with the solutions, how then do we take them to the next level? So the entire workshop was a 3-day workshop that was enabling us start from looking at what are the, and we're looking at right up from the grassroots level. Why isn't the game of rugby, and this is not only for Kenya, this grassroots to global campaign is running across the world. But Kenya was the first one to conduct the workshop in Africa.
What?
So yes, so Kenya was the first one to conduct it. And therefore we are submitting a report saying these are the issues that women in rugby are facing that are hindering the growth of the game. And some of it, of course, is basically leadership issues. It could be the women are not well represented. They came up with very many of them. So we just need to find out what is that one single barrier, because we can't address all of them. As you know, the things facing women in sports are so many.
It's across the board.
It's across the board, and not only one sport. We can't say it's rugby, we can't say it's football. It's across board. But at least the World Rugby has taken this opportunity to see how do we do it. And they began with Kenya. And that for me is a privilege. And that's why I met KIRAGURI and also Dr. Paris Mukoko, and we really charged the girls so that to give them a free and open space. The importance of doing a workshop with the women who are coming from different parts of Kenya, you must also be able to give them a safe space. Because women want to talk. Women want to express their issues. What are they facing in the growth of sports? But do they have the platforms ordinarily? No. So the first important thing was for us to create a safe space. So that's what the workshop was. Create a safe space, let them talk, and let them own the challenges. But more importantly, let them own the solutions.
That's what I was coming to.
Exactly.
So you actually had
a strategy.
They came up with their own solutions.
Exactly.
You know, because we can't always have challenges. We should be able to find a way.
Exactly.
Yes, I have a challenge, but what is the potential of me trying? This is the kind of solution I'd be looking at. Because even if we do go to the higher authority, they might say, okay, so how do you want me to solve your problem?
Exactly.
Is that the question that we keep on being asked?
Exactly.
So I'm glad you're saying that.
It's a process to take them through that. It's a rigorous exercise, like I said, because women sometimes hold back. So you need to be able to come down to their level. You need to be able to talk to them and create that safe space. They will open up. You will both look at the solutions, and then you will come up with what do we then do going forward.
You know, there's something I want to say here. There's a very wise woman. I'm not going to say who, probably she's in the same room with me. She said that sports programs worldwide help women realize their worth and their value, builds confidence, and creates a strong sense of belonging. I don't know whether, Grace, you've met that person somewhere.
I know that person. That person is me. That's the quote I gave when we were doing the rugby, the grassroots to global rugby series. I coined that.
Where did that
phrase.
come from?
That came from the fact that I'm sitting here as an empowered woman who has been in the sports industry for over 17 years. What has sports done for me? Sports has done for me very many things. One, I've earned my living through sports, because I looked at sports from a business lens. I used my business acumen to exploit sports. Okay, so for me, I'm a living testimony that you can build yourself and be who you are through sports. But number two, which is most important for me, is that through these programs, I've gone through a lot of mentorship that has enabled me to build my self-worth and my confidence. I belong to a global sports mentoring network that has the global sports mentoring network that has given me the tools to equip me with a lot of confidence. And so today as I speak here, I believe there are very many more girls that we can empower and build their confidence. And sports is a perfect tool for us to go there. Because sports gives you a chance to participate and a chance to build teamwork and a chance to build a business, for instance. So you become a person who is empowered through taking advantage of all the facets of sports. Personally, I took the business angle of sports as my avenue. I may not have been actively, playing. So I looked at business, at sports from a business angle, and from that henceforth, I build it up. And even every other woman in this sector or in the country can see the same opportunity. Then we are building a forceful group of women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pauline, what do you think about that? Because I can see the same fire in you. Daktari? Daktari?
I heard you say Pauline. I was wondering.
Sorry, I called you Pauline. I've just baptized you another name. So what do you feel about that? Because I've seen that in you. Like, you have that fire. Has sports empowered you as a woman? Or what is your take on that?
Could you repeat the question? I lost you for a minute.
Okay, out of what Grace was talking about just now, talking about how she is a living example of empowerment of a woman through sports. What about you?
Yes.
How does that feel about you?
I was listening to Grace and I was thinking to myself, sometimes the word empowerment is overrated because sometimes we don't have it all together, even when we are assumed to be, doctors and professors and all these beautiful things that we've collected. I was just coming to join this forum, and I had my kids in a car, and I'm trying to balance taking them for swimming and joining in the discussion. And I was thinking that just telling Megan as we came into the group, and we were just the two of us, and I was thinking, yes, as much as we're empowered, I think the best form of empowerment is being able to balance your life, being able to accept that, it's okay to be a woman, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be a mother and still have all these things that you have to balance. And if you are able to just relax a little bit and understand that for you to deliver, you will not have a straight path.
Exactly.
I think then empowerment then makes sense, because there were many times for me as a woman, I had to go to the field with my kids.
Yes.
I had to go for forums with, maybe having a bad hair day, or even having a migraine, or having all sorts of things that were going on behind, the scenes. And yet I would face the world with confidence and face the world with grace and still be able to receive the celebration that I received, but at the same time understand that empowerment for women is not a straight path.
Exactly.
But again, for me, one of the things that has also been very prominent in my life when I joined sports is the fact that as women, if we really want to be on the table to discuss matters that will change lives of other women, we have to be prepared. Exactly. We have to be knowledgeable. We have to seek new skills. We have to seek new networks. We cannot always play the card of vulnerability all the time.
Exactly.
We cannot play the card of minority all the time. We have to seek platforms that are empowering us, seek out education, so that when you're on the table and discussing, then people realize, yes, women, they deserve, they're also capable of being able to deliver, not just to play the card of just being a woman and a minority. Because at the end of the day, if we don't prepare ourselves, equip ourselves, we are going to continue receiving breadcrumbs, like I always say, because
well said.
Sometimes I see women being given posts that are just to shut us down. Yes, we've given gender equality is there. Just have a bit of it. I think it's wrong. At the end of the day, women, let us empower ourselves. Let us seek networks. Let us attend workshops like this. Let us seek, collaboration with others, and also understand that preach the gospel that men are not competitors. We are supposed to complement each other, because there are so many things that a man cannot do that a woman can do, and even do better. There are things that a man can also do and do better than a woman. We are complementing each other. If, for example, I were to give my husband this role and say, okay, you're the mother, yeah, and you have a workshop to attend, I'm sure he would crumble.
Don't try.
But as a woman,
I plead a disclaimer
you're
there, we
still
were
able
not
to
there.
you're still able to hold yourself strong
Oh,
and
dear.
be, put up that way, because God gave us that ability to
Yes,
multitask.
yes, okay.
And so men should not see us as competitors. They should see us as complementers. People
I will,
can be
I
able
will
to
take,
come in
I
and
will take that
fill
word
in
from you.
the gap.
Sorry,
Yes.
my dear, because we are short of time, and I need a short parting word from MAJKEN. I really have had a hard time pronouncing your name. But yes, from you, if you could kindly just give us your last few seconds, a small word, and then we will wrap this session.
Wow, can I turn it around and ask a question to Grace and just ask her, what was the best question that you asked the rugby players in getting from grassroots to global?
Okay, I think the best questions that we asked them was just for them to be able to identify their barriers. And the fact that they were able to sit in small groups and be able to come up with these, we think, are the 5. We actually asked them to identify 10 barriers that have stopped them from growth. From those 5, we then did a voting. From those 10, we did a voting to come to 5. From the 5, we said, now let's vote for the single most barrier that you think is affecting the growth of the game of rugby for women in Kenya. So it was a voting system and an inclusive system for them to be able to identify that one particular barrier. But while I'm answering your question, I wanted to just put a rejoinder, a statement on empowerment, and maybe just this to just maybe answer Daktari. Empowerment is not equal to work-life balance. That's my view. Work-life balance is a systemic challenge for across women all around. But empowerment is an opportunity for us to be the voice, for us to be able to represent women. So it's okay that we have all these other things we do behind our backs. We are women, we are mothers, we are children, and we are balancing. And so it's being balanced by all other women in the career growth as they grow. But the women empowerment when it comes to sport, it will be our ability to be the voice of the other majority who cannot speak like we speak, who are not confident enough to sit in those boardrooms, who are not confident enough to be able to take on the mantle of leadership in sports, and who are not confident enough to be able to speak at policy level. So for me, I believe that empowerment, particularly for women in sports, is inclusion. It's going to be inclusion, that if the world is moving towards diversity, inclusion, and equity, we cannot be left behind. So those women who have a voice, if you represent any sport activity in this country and beyond, be the voice. Don't worry about the work-life balance. We shall struggle and we shall get there.
Well, that's all I have to say, because
Yes.
Grace has said it all. Ladies,
Yeah. Thank you, Grace.
be the voice. Take the mantle. And yes, we can do it. This is Florence Nduta, reporting live from